Hello, nerds for Yang!
Nerds for yanggang.
For this week, we're going to do a policy deep dive, and we're going to focus on the topic of climate change. So we'll compare the policy positions of Andrew Yang on climate change, and then we're going to look at Biden, Bernie, Buttigieg, and Harris, and try and figure out what their positions are on this topic. So if you're new to the channel, which most of you are, or you're not subscribed, please hit that subs button, the big, beautiful red subscribe button. Let's just assume for this video that climate change is like kind of a real thing. So now your next question is probably like, okay, well, what's Andrew Yang gonna do about that? What's he gonna do? So he actually has a 5-point plan. I know that sounds so quaint these days. He's not full of, kind of sweeping, beautiful slogans, although he has some. He's a guy that has actually specific proposals with detailed solutions, which is super refreshing in 2019. And I'm not just talking about the dude in the White House. I'm talking about the whole Democratic Party. Lot of talking, not a lot of details. With Yang, here are the 5 things he wants to do. So first is he wants to both combat and prepare for climate change. He understands that to some extent, it's hard to turn back the clock, and climate change is kind of coming whether we like it or not. It's just a question of how intense it's going to be. And so I like that pragmatic approach. Like, rather than saying, the Green New Deal is going to make everything perfect, I think he's saying like, well, yeah, we should do everything we can, including stuff like the Green New Deal. But also we need to prepare ourselves for a world where, we can't make the sea levels go down, and they will go up. Maybe they won't go up as fast as they're projected to because we take action, but we need to be ready. And as a leader of the free world, you'd want a president that kind of has that vision. The second thing is he acknowledges that the US only contributes 15% of carbon emissions. So even if we as a country cut our emissions in half, which would be a huge leap forward, the rest of the world may not be able to do that. They are sort of less developed economically. It's going to be even more kind of expensive for them to give up their growth for the planet. So we can't assume that all the other countries are going to be as progressive as maybe we might be. His third point is that in addition to reducing our emissions, he also wants to look into carbon capture, geoengineering, where it's like, okay, don't just reduce what you put out there, but also conserve and capture and turn it into something more useful or less lethal. That's kind of controversial because a lot of people say like, well, I don't know, like if you suck out all the CO2 and try and store it or convert it, are you going to end up with unintended consequences? I think my point is like, at least the guy has ideas. That's not common for all candidates. His fourth point is removing any tax breaks for fossil fuel industry. That's going to be super controversial for states that rely heavily on fossil fuel industries. Now, let's be honest, with that's going to affect certain states more than others. So if you are in a state, I would imagine like West Virginia, that is relying on coal, and you lose a bunch of tax breaks, that's not going to be super popular. On the other hand, if you zoom out and you say, well, let's think about what's best for America. Do we want to encourage more fossil fuel use or less? If we say, no, we want to encourage less because we want to reduce carbon dioxide emissions, then you'd have to ask yourself, well, why are we giving tax breaks to industries that increase emissions? Now, maybe what would ideally come with this plan is like, okay, well, then how do you help these states transition away so that they have a sustainable future? Because I don't think the folks in West Virginia, are religious about coal. I think they care about economic wellness and growth and prosperity and having enough resources and opportunities to take care of their families and have a future like everybody wants. So then the question is like, okay, well, it's not their fault. The federal government gave all these tax breaks in the past. Who wouldn't turn that down? But if you take it away drastically, you've got to give like a transition path, in my opinion. And last, he wants to tax emissions. Go from this point where it's like, oh yeah, we gotta care about the environment, to like really putting our money where our mouths are. So if you're driving around in like a V12 super, inefficient SUV, even though it's super cool, I get that, I kind of like cars too, maybe you need to pay more. Like we already have, I think we have that gas guzzler tax, like if your car is like crazy inefficient, you pay a little extra. But we could expand that to say like, well, if you're just moderately inefficient, maybe you should pay a little extra. And if your car is super efficient, then maybe you should pay less tax. Those are the 5 kind of points. Those aren't his official 5 points, just my summary of what I was able to read. I like the idea that he wants to combat climate change, but also prepare us for the inevitable. 2, he acknowledges this is a global problem, and no matter what we do in the US, we only contribute 15% of emissions. 3rd, not just reducing emissions, but also trying to reverse some of that damage with carbon capture and geoengineering. 4th, that he wants to remove tax breaks for fossil fuel industries. And 5th, the opposite of that, he wants to introduce taxes on emissions. And so, if you think about it from a national point of view, and you believe that climate change is real, and let's just say like maybe you're kind of on the fence of what the impact is, at least you might agree that if it is real and if it is as bad as people say it will be, and we do nothing, we're in a world of hurt. If it is real, but maybe it doesn't turn out to be as bad as people think it will be, and we did something, okay, yeah, we'll feel like, wow, we preserved more trees, we polluted less, maybe we didn't have to, we could have polluted a little more. But I'd rather kind of over-conserve than under-conserve when it comes to the health of the planet, because we kind of need the planet. We kind of need that to survive. So that's Yang. Now, I did look at other candidates, and I gotta take my hat off to Bernie. Bernie, on his website, has great specific plans. He's up for the Green New Deal. He wants to move away from fossil fuels 100% renewable. And he thinks that this will not only be good for the planet, but generate millions of jobs. The difference with Yang is probably he wants to spend more of the money on the freedom dividend than on specifically creating green jobs. People can debate about what's better. I could argue that not everybody's going to be able to have a green job. And so $1,000 a month in everybody's pocket may provide more relief. And it might actually help when we remove some of the tax breaks for fossil industries, like we were just talking about West Virginia. If everybody in West Virginia got $1,000 a month, it's not going to replace the coal industry, but it will kind of take the edge off as that economy transitions, hopefully, to something more sustainable. The other Bernie point is invest in infrastructure and programs to protect frontline communities vulnerable to climate impact, reduce carbon pollution emissions from transportation by high-speed rail, ban fracking, ban new fossil fuel infrastructure, keep oil, gas, coal in the ground by banning fossil fuel leases on public lands, and then end exports of coal, natural gas, and crude oil. So, I could argue that Bernie's climate change plan, I think it seems a little bit more muscular, let's say, than Yang's. I think Yang's feels more kind of moderate, maybe. I think he totally gets it and he wants to do something about it, but I don't think he's like all in on the Green New Deal the way Bernie is. And he's definitely not talking about ending exports of coal, natural gas, and oil. And I don't think he's talking about banning fracking. The closest would be removing tax breaks for it, taxing emissions. So, I guess if you're an independent, I think Yang's a little more, let's say middle of the road when you compare him to Bernie. Next, Biden. Well, Biden hasn't said much, but this is what I was able to find on his website around climate change. Climate change threatens communities across the country, from beachfront coastal towns to rural farms in the heartland. We must turbocharge our efforts to address climate change and ensure that every American has access to clean drinking water, clean air, and an environment free from pollutants. So I would say Biden's statement sounds like more like a traditional politician. Like, who wouldn't agree with clean drinking water, clean air, and environment free of pollutants? I think he's kind of avoiding making tough calls. So Pete Buttigieg, what does he think about climate change? I couldn't find a lot of detail. I know I said this in previous videos, like Buttigieg has a lot going for him, like details and specifics are not one of them. And I think he's publicly said that this is not how he's gonna campaign. Here's what he's saying. Pete is laying out a vision, values, and policies to ensure that America's future is better than its past. We need to secure a future in which every American has the freedom to live a life of their choosing, where our republic grows more and not less, where racial justice is a reality and not a dream, where we put an end to endless war, where we summon the national will to meet the challenge of climate change, where everyone has the health care they need, and where everyone has a chance to find purpose. I would put Booty in the same kind of camp as Biden. It's very motherhood and apple pie. Yeah, of course, we want a future better than the past. Like, but dude, what are you going to do, man? Like, that's not just going to happen in a photo op. Like, you got to make hard calls. Like, this is a real problem. Now, Harris. I also looked at Harris. What did Kamala Harris say about climate change on her website? Let's speak truth. Climate change is real and it's happening now. From wildfires in the west to hurricanes in the east to floods and droughts in the heartland, we're not going to buy the lie. We're going to act based on science, fact, not science fiction. Well, that's kind of catchy. You know, science fact, not science fiction.
It's kind of like a poem, kind of.
Like a poem, yeah. I don't know, man. I don't know if you run a country with poetry, though. I think we need hard calls, man.
More power to stop stuff.
Yeah, you need more action, right?
Instead of making a poem.
Yeah, that's what I would say. I agree with you, Brandon. Let's summarize. Number one, Yang has very specific proposals. Some that you may not hear from other candidates, like carbon capture, geoengineering, taxing emissions, cutting tax breaks for fossil industries, and also just preparing for the reality of inevitable climate change. We got to give props to Bernie. If you believe climate change is real, that Bernie has a probably more aggressive plan, I would say. You know, how aggressive do you want to be? Like that, I'll leave that to you guys. And then we would also argue that it is a real thing based on, if you believe not just the scientists in academia, but the scientists in NASA, and the generals and scientists in the Department of Defense. It's happening. Maybe we can debate how fast it's happening and how bad it's going to be, but I think there's like a very clear consensus that it's real. And then with the rest of the candidates like Biden, Booty, and Harris, a lot of poetry, a lot of slogans.
Not that good for the...
You don't think so?
No, I don't think this poetry works.
Yeah, I hear you, brother. Who do you think is most equipped to help us solve this problem?
I don't know.
You're undecided?
Probably like
okay.
Co-op.
This is Bernie's.
Yeah.
This is Yang's. Biden is this sentence.
Okay. Yeah, I think Yang.
Okay. Well, look, I don't want to force you to support Yang. Even though this is the Nerds for Yang channel. If you like Biden, I get it. And Bernie, I know, he's got a lot going for him. If this was useful, please subscribe, like, and share this video. Because even though it only took us 20 minutes to shoot, we're going to have to go a few hours of editing now.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. We just started a petition to get Andrew Yang on the Hot Ones. Which, if you're not familiar with it, is you should totally watch it. It's done by a channel called First We Feast, and this guy Sean Evans interviews people as they eat increasingly spicy hot wings, and he's done it with like huge celebrities. He's done it with Neil deGrasse Tyson. He's done it with big YouTubers like Casey Neistat. He's done it with amazing actresses and actors. He's done it, but he has not done it with any presidential candidate. So? And in my opinion, Yang would be perfect. Why? Because he is the candidate of the internet, of the people. Number two, he's not so uptight. He'll do it. The Yang will go on that show and he will go the distance. You better, if you get on that show, Andrew, you go all the way to the...
Are you sure he's gonna be doing that?
Yeah, because Andrew knows that...
Do you think he's gonna be able to make it?
I think so.
Okay.
I mean, he says he's used to...
Spice?
Well, he says he's used to weird food growing up with Taiwanese parents.
Yeah.
The problem is the Taiwanese, no offense to the Taiwanese, are not known for their ability to handle spicy food. So maybe the Yangster will not go all the way.
Maybe.
We'll have to see. So if you would love to see Yang on the Hot Ones, and I guarantee you, like Hot Ones, they typically get millions and millions of views per episode. Some of them have like over 10 million views, I think. Huge exposure for the Yang Gang to get him on there. So even if you haven't watched the show, go check it out. You'll love it. Link below. But then sign the petition.
Sign the petition.
So that we can pressure Sean Evans, First We Feast, and Andrew Yang to get together and talk about securing the bag over some wings.
Wings.
Do you like wings?
Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
Oh.
Thanks again. So subscribe to make sure you get the first to notify. And I also do posts to the community tab. In the middle of the week. Only people who subscribe get notified, so that's another reason to subscribe. With that, are we going to end with the Nerds for Yang chant? Nerds for Yang. 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 All right, see you guys next week. Keep it real.